The year is 1847. Dust devils danced across the parched earth of the Colorado Territory, mirroring the turmoil in young Evangeline McCarthy's heart. 17 years she'd lived, mostly peaceful ones, helping her mother tend their small garden and dreaming of a life beyond the dusty town of Redemption. But her mother was gone now, taken by a fever last spring, and her father, bless his well-meaning but foolish heart, had fallen prey to the lure of the gambling tables. Now, here she stood, perched precariously on a wooden crate in front of the town's makeshift auction stage. The midday sun beat down mercilessly, turning the faces in the crowd into a blur of greedy eyes and whispered speculations. She clutched the worn fabric of her simple cotton dress, the only garment she possessed that wasn't stained with the dust of the territory. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, cheap whiskey, and desperation. Her father, Thomas McCarthy, stood nearby, his face a mask of shame and regret. He avoided her gaze, his shoulders slumped as if carrying the weight of the world. He'd sworn he could win back the money, that his luck would change. He'd sworn he'd never let it come to this. But oaths made over a bottle of rot-gut whiskey were as fragile as spun glass. The auctioneer, a portly man with a booming voice and a slicked-back mustache, cleared his throat, his eyes gleaming with morbid excitement. "All right, gentlemen, let's get this show on the road. We have here a fine young woman, Evangeline McCarthy, strong, healthy, and ready to work. What my bid?" A chorus of bids erupted from the crowd, each one a hammer blow to Evangeline's spirit. Farmers looking for cheap labor, saloon owners with lascivious grins, and grizzled prospectors hoping for a cook and a companion. Each offer chipped away at her sense of self, reducing her to a commodity, a thing to be bought and sold. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the already indistinct faces. She closed her eyes, wishing she could disappear, be swallowed by the very dust that swirled around her feet. She imagined her mother's gentle hand on her cheek, her calming voice whispering words of comfort. But her mother was gone, and Evangeline was alone, facing a future as bleak and unforgiving as the Colorado landscape. The bidding continued, each number echoing the loss of her freedom. She squeezed her eyes shut tighter, a silent prayer escaping her lips. "Please, someone, anyone help me." As the auctioneer's voice reached a fever pitch, a hush fell over the crowd. A new voice, deep and resonant, cut through the noise like a honed blade. $500. Evangeline's eyes snapped open. She blinked, trying to focus on the source of the sound. Standing at the edge of the crowd was a man she'd never seen before. He was tall and lean, his face weathered and etched with lines that spoke of hard work and harder living. His eyes, the color of a stormy sky, held a depth that both intrigued and intimidated her. He wore a simple, dark-colored coat, and a wide-brimmed hat shaded his face, adding to his air of mystery. The auctioneer, momentarily stunned into silence, recovered quickly. $500. Do I hear 6? He scanned the crowd, but no one dared to challenge the newcomer's bid. The other men, who moments before had been so eager to possess her, now seemed reluctant to meet the stranger's gaze. "Going once," the auctioneer announced, his voice losing some of its earlier enthusiasm. "Going twice." Evangeline held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Who was this man, and why would he spend such a large sum of money on her? Was he any different from the others? Fear mingled with a flicker of hope, a fragile ember in the darkness. "Sold, to the gentleman in the coat," the auctioneer declared, bringing down his gavel with a resounding thud. The crowd murmured, a mixture of disappointment and curiosity rippling through their ranks. Thomas McCarthy shuffled forward, his face a mixture of relief and apprehension. He approached the stranger cautiously. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you." The stranger turned his gaze towards Thomas, his expression unreadable. "My name is Josiah Blackwood." He extended a hand, his grip firm. "I own a ranch a few hours north of here. I need someone to help with the cooking and cleaning." Thomas looked at Evangeline, then back at Josiah. "She's a good worker, sir. Honest and hardworking." Josiah's eyes met Evangeline's. "I'll be the judge of that." He turned to the auctioneer. I'll need the bill of sale. As Josiah settled the transaction, Evangeline remained frozen, unsure of what to do or say. She watched as Josiah spoke briefly with her father, their voices too low for her to hear. A moment later, Josiah turned back to her, his gaze direct and unwavering. "Are you ready to go, Miss McCarthy?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. Evangeline swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Yes, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Josiah nodded. "Then let's be on our way." He turned and walked towards a waiting horse, a large, muscular animal with a calm demeanor. Evangeline hesitated for a moment, glancing back at her father. He offered a weak smile, a silent plea for her to accept this unexpected turn of events. With a deep breath, she followed Josiah, stepping away from the auction stage and towards an uncertain future. The ride to Josiah's ranch was long and arduous. Evangeline rode behind him on his large horse, clinging to his broad back for support. The landscape was unforgiving, a seemingly endless expanse of rocky terrain and sparse vegetation. The sun beat down relentlessly, and the dust swirled around them, coating everything in a fine layer of grit. Josiah remained silent for most of the journey, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Evangeline didn't dare to speak, unsure of what to say or ask. She studied the back of his head, trying to glean some insight into the man who had so unexpectedly altered the course of her life. His dark hair was streaked with silver, and his shoulders were broad and strong. He seemed like a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Josiah finally broke the silence. "We're almost there," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "The ranch is just over that ridge." Evangeline followed his gaze and saw a cluster of buildings nestled in a small valley. It wasn't much, a simple wooden house, a barn, and a few outbuildings, but looked like a haven after the long, grueling ride. As they approached the ranch, a dog bounded out to greet them, barking excitedly. It was a large, shaggy mutt with a friendly face and a wagging tail. Josiah dismounted and ruffled the dog's fur. "Easy, boy," he said. "This is Evangeline. Be nice to her." The dog, seemingly understanding Josiah's words, wagged its tail even harder and sniffed at Evangeline's hand. She tentatively reached out and stroked its head, a small smile gracing her lips. Josiah led her to the house, a small, one-room cabin with a porch that wrapped around two sides. He opened the door and gestured for her to enter. The interior was simple but clean, with a small fireplace, a table and chairs, and a bed in the corner. "It's not much," Josiah said, "but it's home." He gestured towards a small alcove off the main room. "That'll be your room. There's a bed and a chest of drawers. I'll bring in some water for you to wash up." Evangeline stepped inside, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. It was small and humble, but it was hers, a place to rest, a place to feel safe. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. "Thank you for everything." Josiah nodded, his expression softening slightly. "You've had a long day. Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning." He turned and walked out of the house, leaving Evangeline alone in her new surroundings. She stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The silence of the countryside, the warmth of the setting sun filtering through the windows, the gentle presence of the dog lying on the porch. It wasn't the life she had imagined for herself, but it was a life nonetheless. And for the first time in a long time, Evangeline felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things would be all right after all. The next morning, Evangeline awoke to the sound of birds chirping and the smell of wood smoke. She dressed in her simple cotton dress and ventured out of her room. Josiah was already up, tending to a fire in the hearth. He looked up as she entered, his expression neutral. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you slept well." "Yes, sir. Thank you," Evangeline replied. "I did. I've made some coffee and biscuits," Josiah said, gesturing towards the table. "Help yourself." Evangeline gratefully accepted a cup of coffee and a biscuit. As she ate, Josiah sat down across from her, his eyes studying her intently. "I want to be clear about something, Miss McCarthy," he said, his voice serious. "I didn't buy you to be my slave. I bought you to help me run this ranch. I need someone to cook, clean, and tend to the garden. In return, I'll provide you with food, shelter, and a safe environment." Evangeline nodded, her heart filled with relief. "I understand, sir. I'm grateful for the opportunity. There's also the matter of your father's debt," Josiah continued. "He owes me $500. I expect you to work off that debt." Evangeline's heart sank slightly, but she nodded again. "How long will that take, sir?" "At the going rate for domestic work, it will take about 2 years," Josiah replied. "But I'm willing to be fair. If you work hard and prove yourself trustworthy, I'll deduct a portion of the debt each month." Evangeline's eyes widened. "Really, sir? You do that?" "I believe in rewarding hard work," Josiah said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "But I also expect honesty and respect. If you lie to me or disrespect me, I won't hesitate to send you back to redemption." Evangeline's face fell. "I wouldn't do that, sir. I promise." "Good," Josiah said. "Then we understand each other." He stood up from the table. "Now, let's get to work. I'll show you around the ranch and explain your duties." And so, Evangeline's new life began. She spent her days working alongside Josiah, learning the ins and outs of running a ranch. She cooked meals, cleaned the house, tended to the garden, and even helped with some of the livestock. It was hard work, but it was honest work. And for the first time in a long time, Evangeline felt a sense of purpose. Josiah, true to his word, treated her with respect and kindness. He never raised his voice, never demanded anything of her that was unreasonable, and always made sure she had everything she needed. He taught her how to ride a horse, how to shoot a gun, and how to survive in the harsh Colorado landscape. As the weeks turned into months, Evangeline began to feel a sense of belonging on the ranch. She grew to love the wide-open spaces, the quiet solitude, and the simple rhythm of life. She also began to develop a deep respect and admiration for Josiah. He was a complex man, with a gruff exterior and a hidden heart of gold. She sensed that he carried a heavy burden, a secret sorrow that he kept locked away inside. But she also saw glimpses of his kindness, his compassion, and his unwavering sense of justice. And slowly, without her even realizing it, Evangeline began to fall in love with him. The bond between Evangeline and Josiah grew stronger with each passing day. They spent hours working side by side, mending fences, tending to the cattle, and planting crops. As they worked, they talked, sharing stories about their pasts, their hopes for the future, and their dreams for a better life. Evangeline learned that Josiah had lost his wife and child to a tragic illness several years ago. The grief had hardened him, turning him into a recluse who preferred the company of animals to people. He had come to the Colorado Territory seeking solace and a way to escape the pain of his past. Josiah, in turn, learned about Evangeline's childhood, her love for her mother, and her dreams of becoming a teacher. He admired her strength, her resilience, and her unwavering optimism, even in the face of adversity. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Josiah turned to Evangeline, his eyes filled with a warmth she had never seen before. "You know, Evangeline," he said, "you've brought a lot of light back into this old house. I haven't felt this happy in a long time." Evangeline blushed, her heart swelling with affection. "I'm glad, Josiah," she said. "I'm happy here too." As the months passed, their relationship deepened. They shared quiet moments of companionship, reading books by the fire, taking long walks in the countryside, and simply enjoying each other's company. They learned to trust each other, to rely on each other, and to confide in each other. One day, a fierce storm swept through the territory, bringing torrential rain and howling winds. The creek that ran through the ranch overflowed its banks, flooding the barn and threatening to wash away the livestock. Josiah and Evangeline worked tirelessly throughout the night, trying to save the animals and protect the ranch from the raging floodwaters. They were soaked to the bone, exhausted and afraid, but they refused to give up. As the sun began to rise, the storm finally subsided. The floodwaters receded, leaving behind a trail of destruction. But the ranch was still standing, and the livestock were safe. Josiah and Evangeline collapsed on the porch, their bodies aching, their spirits weary. They looked at each other, their faces streaked with mud, and burst out laughing. "We did it," Evangeline said, her voice hoarse. "We saved the ranch." Josiah reached out and took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "We did it together," he said, "and that's what matters." In that moment, Evangeline knew that her feelings for Josiah were more than just gratitude or admiration. She loved him with all her heart, and she knew, deep down, that he loved her too. Their bond had been forged in the crucible of shared hardship, mutual respect, and unwavering affection. And it was a bond that would last a lifetime. Despite the growing warmth between them, Evangeline sensed a deep sadness within Josiah, a shadow that lingered behind his kind eyes. She noticed it in the way he sometimes stared off into the distance, lost in thought, or in the way he flinched at sudden noises, as if expecting danger. She knew that his past held secrets, wounds that had not yet healed. One evening, while Evangeline was cleaning up after dinner, she stumbled upon a small, wooden box hidden beneath Josiah's bed. Curiosity piqued, she carefully opened it. Inside, she found a faded photograph of a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, holding a baby in her arms. On the back of the photograph, a single word was written in elegant script: Sarah. Evangeline's heart ached for Josiah. She knew that Sarah must have been his wife, the woman he had lost to illness. The photograph was a tangible reminder of his pain, a glimpse into the life he had once had and lost. She carefully placed the photograph back in a box and returned it to its hiding place, resolving to never mention it to Josiah. She understood that his past was a sensitive subject, and she didn't want to cause him any further pain. However, the discovery of the photograph made her even more determined to help him heal. She wanted to show him that he was not alone, that he could find happiness again, that he deserved to be loved. On another occasion, Evangeline overheard Josiah talking to a man who had ridden out to the ranch. The man was a former acquaintance of Josiah's from his life back east. Their conversation was brief and strained, filled with veiled references to a past that Josiah seemed eager to forget. "I don't want to talk about it, Thomas," Josiah said, his voice hard. "It's over. It's done." "But Josiah," Thomas protested, "you can't just run away from your problems. You need to face them." "I am facing them," Josiah retorted. "By building a new life, by leaving the past behind." Evangeline didn't hear the rest of their conversation, but she gathered that Josiah's past was more complicated than she had initially imagined. It wasn't just the loss of his wife and child, but something else, something darker, something that he was trying to escape. These glimpses into Josiah's past only deepened Evangeline's feelings for him. She saw him not just as a strong and capable rancher, but as a vulnerable and wounded man who needed her love and support. She knew that breaking through his defenses would be a challenge, but she was willing to try. She believed that love could conquer all, even the deepest and darkest of secrets. She was determined to help Josiah find peace, to help him heal, and to build a future together, free from the shadows of the past. The shift from a working relationship to something more was subtle, almost imperceptible at first. Small gestures, lingering glances, and comfortable silences began to carry a different weight. Evangeline found herself looking forward to Josiah's smile, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed, and the comforting presence of his hand brushing against hers as they worked. Josiah, too, seemed to be changing. He became more attentive, more talkative, and more open about his feelings. He started sharing stories from his childhood, memories of his late wife, and his dreams for the future of the ranch. He even began to compliment Evangeline on her cooking, her gardening, and her unwavering spirit. One warm summer evening, after a long day of working in the fields, Josiah and Evangeline sat on the porch, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight. The air was still and quiet, filled with the scent of wildflowers and the distant hooting of an owl. Josiah turned to Evangeline, his eyes filled with a tenderness she had never seen before. "Evangeline," he said, his voice low and husky, I need to tell you something." Evangeline's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what he was going to say, and she was both excited and terrified. "I've come to care for you a great deal," Josiah continued, his gaze fixed on hers. "More than I ever thought possible. You brought so much joy and laughter back into my life. You've shown me that it's possible to love again." Evangeline reached out and took his hand, her fingers interlacing with his. "I care for you too, Josiah," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "More than words can say." Josiah leaned closer, his breath warm on her cheek. "I know this is sudden," he said, "and I know I'm much older than you. But I can't deny my feelings any longer. I love you, Evangeline, with all my heart." Tears welled up in Evangeline's eyes. "I love you too, Josiah," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Josiah cupped her face in his hands and gently kissed her. It was a sweet, tender kiss, filled with longing and affection. Evangeline closed her eyes and surrendered to the moment, her heart overflowing with happiness. As they pulled apart, Josiah looked at her, his eyes filled with hope and uncertainty. "What do we do now?" he asked. Evangeline smiled, her eyes sparkling with love. "We take things one day at a time," she said. "We build a future together, a future filled with love, laughter, and happiness." Josiah smiled back, his face radiant with joy. "I like the sound of that," he said. From that moment on, their relationship blossomed into a deep and passionate love affair. They spent their days working together, their evenings sharing intimate conversations, and their nights wrapped in each other's arms. They were two souls who had found each other in the most unexpected of circumstances, two hearts that had been broken and healed by the power of love. They had built a strong and lasting bond, a bond that would withstand the trials and tribulations of life in the harsh Colorado territory. They were in love, and they were determined to make their love last. Their newfound happiness, however, was soon to be tested. One day, a circuit judge arrived at the ranch, seeking shelter from an approaching storm. Josiah, ever hospitable, welcomed him inside. The judge, a kind and intelligent man named Mr. Abernathy, struck up a conversation with Evangeline, inquiring about her life and her work on the ranch. During their conversation, Evangeline mentioned the circumstances of her arrival at the ranch, explaining how her father's gambling debts had led to her being auctioned off and how Josiah had purchased her freedom. Mr. Abernathy's expression grew serious. "Miss McCarthy," he said, "are you aware that the contract your father signed is not legally binding?" Evangeline's eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean, sir?" "In this territory," Mr. Abernathy explained, "a father cannot legally sell his daughter into servitude to pay off a debt, especially when she is a minor. The contract is null and void. You are free, Miss McCarthy. You are always free." Evangeline was stunned. The revelation hit her like a thunderbolt. She had spent months working off a debt that she didn't legally owe, bound to a contract that was worthless. She felt a surge of anger towards her father for putting her in this situation, and a sense of betrayal towards the townspeople who had allowed the auction to take place. But as the initial shock wore off, Evangeline realized that this newfound freedom also presented her with a choice. She was no longer bound to Josiah by a sense of obligation. She could leave the ranch, pursue her dreams of becoming a teacher, and start a new life on her own. The thought of leaving Josiah, however, filled her with a profound sense of sadness. She loved him deeply, and she couldn't imagine her life without him. But she also knew that she couldn't stay with him out of a sense of duty. She had to make a decision based on her own desires and her own happiness. That night, Evangeline struggled to sleep, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts and emotions. She tossed and turned, weighing her options, trying to decide what to do. Should she leave the ranch and pursue her own dreams? Or should she stay with Josiah and follow her heart? The decision was agonizing, and she knew that whatever she chose, it would change her life forever. She knew she had to talk to Josiah, to tell him the truth about the contract and about her feelings. But she was afraid of what he would say, afraid of losing him. She knew that the coming days would be the most challenging of her life, and that her future happiness depended on the choices she made. The following morning, Evangeline approached Josiah with a heavy heart. She found him in the barn, tending to a newborn calf. He looked up as she entered, a gentle smile gracing his lips. "Good morning, Evangeline," he said. "Sleep well." Evangeline took a deep breath. "Josiah, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Josiah's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "What's wrong?" Evangeline recounted her conversation with Mr. Abernathy, explaining the illegality of her father's contract and her newfound freedom. Josiah listened intently, his expression growing increasingly somber. When she had finished, he remained silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the ground. Finally, he looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "I see," he said softly. "So, you're free to leave whenever you want." Evangeline's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "Yes," she said, "but that doesn't mean I want to leave." Josiah's eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Evangeline said, her voice filled with emotion, "that I love you, Josiah, and I don't want to leave you. But I also don't want to stay with you out of sense of obligation. I want to stay because I choose to, because I love you and I want to spend my life with you." Josiah stepped closer to her, his hand reaching out to gently cup her face. "Evangeline," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "you have no idea how happy that makes me. I was so afraid that you would leave, that I would lose you." "You're not going to lose me, Josiah," Evangeline said, her eyes sparkling with tears. "I'm here to stay, if you'll have me." Josiah's face broke into a wide, radiant smile. "Of course, I'll have you," he said. "I want you more than anything in the world." He pulled her close and embraced her tightly, his body trembling with relief and joy. Evangeline wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest, and wept tears of happiness. In that moment, they knew that their love was true. That was a love that had been forged in the crucible of shared hardship, mutual respect, and unwavering affection. It was a love that would withstand the trials and tribulations of life, a love that would last a lifetime. Evangeline had made her choice. She had chosen to follow her heart, to stay with Josiah, and to build a future together, a future filled with love, laughter, and happiness. And as she stood there in his arms, she knew that she had made the right decision. She had found her home, her family, and her soulmate. She had found everything she had ever dreamed of, right there in the heart of the harsh Colorado territory. With their love reaffirmed and their future secure, Josiah and Evangeline began to plan their wedding. They wanted a simple ceremony, surrounded by the people who mattered most to them. They sent word to Mr. Abernathy, the kind judge who had brought them together, and invited a few of the neighboring ranchers who had become their friends. Evangeline, with the help of her friends, fashioned a beautiful wedding dress from some white cotton fabric. She embroidered it with delicate wildflowers, each stitch a testament to her love for Josiah and her gratitude for their life together. Josiah, in turn, cleaned and polished his best suit, the same one he had worn the day he bought her freedom. On the day of the wedding, the sun shone brightly, casting a golden glow over the ranch. The ceremony was held in the front yard, beneath a sprawling oak tree. Mr. Abernathy officiated, his voice filled with warmth and sincerity. As Evangeline walked down the aisle, her heart overflowed with happiness. She saw Josiah standing at the altar, his eyes filled with love and admiration. He looked handsome and strong, a man who had overcome great adversity to find love and happiness again. They exchanged vows, promising to love, cherish, and support each other through all of life's joys and sorrows. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, a cheer erupted from the small crowd of guests. After the ceremony, everyone gathered for a celebratory feast. Evangeline and Josiah had prepared a delicious meal filled with all of their favorite foods. There was roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, corn on the cob, and a homemade apple pie for dessert. As the evening wore on, everyone shared stories, laughter, and heartfelt wishes for the happy couple. Evangeline and Josiah danced beneath the stars, their bodies swaying to the music of a fiddle played by one of their neighbors. In the years that followed, Evangeline and Josiah built a fulfilling life together on the ranch. They worked hard, they loved deeply, and they created a warm and welcoming home for their growing family. They had several children, each one a blessing and a testament to their love. Evangeline, with Josiah's encouragement, eventually fulfilled her dream of becoming a teacher. She started a small schoolhouse on the ranch, where she taught her own children and the children of the neighboring ranchers. She instilled in them a love of learning, a sense of curiosity, and a belief in the power of education. Josiah, with Evangeline's love and support, finally found peace from the demons of his past. He learned to forgive himself for his mistakes, to embrace the present, and to look forward to the future with hope and optimism. He became a respected member of the community, known for his kindness, his generosity, and his unwavering sense of justice. Together, Evangeline and Josiah created a life filled with love, family, and a strong sense of community. They proved that even in the harshest of environments, love could flourish, hope could prevail, and dreams could come true. They had found their happily ever after, right there in the heart of the Colorado Territory. Years passed, and the Blackwood Ranch became a beacon of hope and prosperity in the Colorado Territory. Evangeline and Josiah's children grew into strong, independent young men and women, each carrying their parents' values of hard work, honesty, and compassion. Evangeline's schoolhouse flourished, attracting students from miles around. She instilled in them a love of learning and a belief in the power of education to transform lives. Many of her students went on to become teachers, doctors, and community leaders, carrying her legacy forward. Josiah, with Evangeline by his side, became a pillar of the community. He served as a mentor to young ranchers, a mediator in disputes, and a voice for the voiceless. He used his wealth and influence to improve the lives of others, always remembering the struggles he had overcome to achieve his own success. Their love for each other only deepened with time. They were partners in every sense of the word, supporting each other through thick and thin, celebrating each other's successes, and comforting each other during times of sorrow. They were an inspiration to everyone who knew them, a testament to the power of love to heal, to transform, and to endure. One evening, as the sun set over the Colorado Territory, Evangeline and Josiah sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Their faces were etched with wrinkles, their hair streaked with gray, but their eyes still sparkled with the same love and affection they had shared so many years ago. "We've had a good life, haven't we, Josiah?" Evangeline said, her voice filled with contentment. Josiah reached out and took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "The best life," he said, "more than I ever could have imagined." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the children play, listening to the sounds of the countryside, and feeling the warmth of each other's presence. They had overcome great adversity. They had faced countless challenges, but they had always persevered, their love for each other serving as their guiding light. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Evangeline leaned her head against Josiah's shoulder, a sense of peace washing over her. She had found her happily ever after, not in a fairy tale castle, but in the heart of the harsh Colorado Territory, with a man she loved more than life itself. Their story became a legend, passed down through generations of settlers who came to the Colorado Territory seeking a better life. It was a story of hope, of courage, of resilience, and of the transformative power of love. It was a story that proved that even in the darkest of times, love could flourish, dreams could come true, and happily ever afters were possible for those who dared to believe. And as the wind whispered through the trees, carrying their story on the breeze, the message was clear: never give up on love, never give up on hope, and never give up on the possibility of a brighter future. The end.